does it mean to be intriguing? What is intrigue all about? How can you create intrigue so that your audience is automatically interested in hearing what you have to say? And how can you teach your clients how to be more intriguing so that they can create more things in the world that are useful to them? This subject is all about intrigue, and it's all about how we go about using it in the most practical way. Mike and I go down the deep rabbit hole of intrigue on today's Big Leap podcast.
One of the things that we add is Gay has some really good ideas about how to open up speeches, how to grab and get intrigue in books. We also go down a little bit of a rabbit hole talking about how to create deeper, more meaningful conversations. You'll also learn about Jeffersonian dinners. All that and more in this episode of The Big Leap. Hey, this is Mike Koenigs. I'm here with Gay Hendricks, and today's episode is intrigue. Now, the way I framed this with Gay when we were talking was, Ted has ideas worth sharing. I was asking Gay if you've ever had someone walk up to you at an event, very, very intrigued. They had something they really felt was important that they learned from one of your books. That is the intrigue-o-meter being activated. And I also asked Gay, let's say you got asked to speak. You've got to have your opening line, your opening sentence that not only gets people thinking, it gets them engaged, gets them thinking about what's going on, but also you want them to carry on the conversation later. Something they're going to share at a dinner conversation and say, you wouldn't believe what I just saw, heard, or read. So Gay, with that setup in mind, what shows up for you?
Well, the number one thing that people have come up to me and said after I give a speech or come up to me on the street about my books, the number one thing is authenticity. And I take that to mean a bunch of different things. But one thing that it means is they detect somehow that I'm speaking honestly from my heart about something. And I can actually remember, as a matter of fact, I remember when I was not able to do that. And some of the things that, this brings back so many amazing moments. And here was the first one.
Okay.
I wrote my first book while I was still in graduate school on a borrowed typewriter at night. And so I would do my insane graduate school stuff all day long, classes and counseling people and all that you had to do in the counseling psychology program. And then at night I would hunker down, and they had these in the education offices, they had these fantastic new machines called IBM Selectric typewriters.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe was that before you were born, or do you remember?
No. I learned to type, believe it or not, on a manual typewriter. I was the fastest boy in typing class because I wanted to program computers so much. You too?
Me too. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I was highly inspired because my buddy who was in the Marine Corps said, if you get drafted in the Army and they find out you can type, you don't have to shoot. You don't have to do as much shooting kinds of things. And my wife claims that I'm the clumsiest person she's ever met with manual things. The only thing I'm good at is swinging a golf club. But if she sees me with a tool in my hand, she comes running and gets it out of me quickly. I'm going to hurt somebody. So I was eager to not have to get into a portion of the Army that had to shoot at people, because I know I'd be just as dangerous to my own troops as I would be to the enemy. Anyway, so that was my typing story. But I wrote my first book. I'd been volunteering in my daughter's kindergarten and first grade classroom, and I noticed how much time it took the teacher to round up the kids and get them back into kind of a centered learning mode. And so I made up a whole bunch of activities, relaxation activities, guided meditations, things, and I put them together in something called the Centering Book, and was for teachers and parents to use with kids. And it turned out to be a nice little runaway bestseller in the education area. And I got invited right away to go out and speak at a bunch of education conferences. And
Yeah.
I had not done anything like that before. And I was suddenly sort of semi-famous in an area that, I was kind of brand new in too, because I'd only thought about this one book. I wasn't an expert in education by any means. So suddenly I'm speaking in auditoriums full of experienced teachers. And the very first time I gave my presentation on my centering book, this guy came up to me afterwards and said, Dr. Hendricks, I really related to to your talk. And I said, oh, really? I brightened up. Tell me about it, And
Yeah. Yeah.
he said, yeah, it wasn't what you said, how you said it. That was intriguing to me. Speaking of
Yeah.
intrigue. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, your voice shakes just as badly as mine does when I try to speak in public. And so that was,
Wow.
he gave me this great piece of feedback. And I hadn't even realized it. I knew I was nervous,
Yeah.
but I remember to top it all off, I was being paid
Yeah.
this outrageous sum, like $150 for giving this talk. And, suddenly I'm in a whole different realm where rather than speaking to university students and graduate students, suddenly I'm talking to paying customers, and that injects a whole new
Yeah.
thing into your life. So anyway, what I did, I got on a plane that day and I flew to California, to Berkeley, where I was going to do another presentation like the
Yeah.
one I'd done. And so I figured out this secret along the way. So instead of trying to make my voice shake left, I got up and I said, um, I'm nervously beginning to talk to you, and you can probably hear that in my voice.
Mhm.
I'm kind of new at this whole public speaking thing to this kind of group, and um, so bear with me as I share some ideas, just with the background understanding that this is kind of new territory for me. And
Yeah.
at the end of it, I got a standing ovation. And
Wow.
that made such an impression on me. I mean, people just leaped to their feet when I finished. And I never had that happen before.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a teacher before, but in a university setting. And as you can probably remember, university students don't jump to their feet at the end of a good lecture. Usually, they slink out of the place checking their telephones.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so this was brand new. And what it taught me was authenticity,
Mm.
to just speak to whatever is going on,
Yeah.
because everybody knows what's going on. If my voice is shaking, everybody can hear me. Well, the
Mm.
interesting thing was when I started doing things like that, my voice quit shaking. I was
Yeah.
no longer, because I was speaking to the present moment. And so I think that that's the biggest thing I use as a factor of intrigue is
Hmm.
when I appear in front of a group, I want the first thing out of my mouth to be something that's so right on and compelling that they can't help but start to let the message in. And, if it's a beautiful day, I don't ever say, oh, it's a beautiful day today, because I know there are going to be some people in the audience that it's the worst day of their life. They just got fired or left or something before they came in the door, or, something else, but everybody's not going to share that experience. What I can say is, I just got here from New Hampshire where I hadn't seen the sun in a few days, and I'm really enjoying the way the sun is streaming in the window. That's
Yeah.
intriguing because that's a
Yeah.
reflection of a here and now
Yeah.
experience. And if we can learn to talk like that, um, that almost guarantees that there's going to be a factor of intrigue there.
Mm. Okay. That's really good. And I think just as much about the authenticity, what I just heard, I'm going to reflect back to you my experience of you. And I'm doing this because um you reminded me of a conversation I just had at a great dinner last night. Okay. So what I loved about that is when you're authentic, it's not just authentic, it's how someone will understand how you interpret the world around you, right? So
Mhm.
what you observe and what you feel and what you experience tells you a lot about who that person is and how raw and real they're willing to be, back to authentic. And like just bringing up and using what you observed when you walked into the room. I mean, it's just like because you can either come from a place of observation or judgment. And I think the more you come from a place of observation, the more intriguing and interesting you'll be. Um, and so that's number one. But I've got 3 stage tips here that popped up. Oh, first, before I do, I'm going to give you the explanation of what happened at the dinner, because I was
Yeah.
listening to um, a group of my friends who are very deep thinkers. They're like Burning Man attendees. They've done a lot of inner work. They still do. And they do a lot of deep group inner work that requires a lot of rawness and authenticity. And I always find people who have either done the inner work or they've done a lot of plant medicine, a lot of mushrooms, in other words, psilocybin, they're usually deeper thinkers than the average bear. So with that, they were talking about this guy named Gerald, and they showed me a picture of him, and he looks very Jesus-y, and he has a real interesting cadence about how he speaks. But what everyone at the table said about him is he's like the perfect wingman, because he'll tell you stories about yourself that you don't know about yourself to other people. So he'll open up and say, "Let me tell you what I love so much about Gay Hendricks." And he'll just roll on, and he's got this cadence and the storytelling pace, and he's deliberate and conscious the whole time. And that certainly, makes for an intriguing personality, as someone who's that dynamic, charismatic leader, and you always feel good around them. And that's going to make you doubly intriguing. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what a friend of mine did. He's a therapist back in Connecticut named Leonard Reuter, and I've known him for many, many years. And his wife is a nurse at a hospital, and I guess had started working at a new hospital where he didn't know any of her colleagues. And so he went with her to a big party or social gathering where he was going to meet all of her new colleagues for the first time. And there was maybe 40 or 50 people there that worked at the hospital in various functions. And he made this decision before he went to the party that he was not going to say anything about himself, that he was simply going to reflect back and paraphrase what other people said to him. And so this went on for the whole party. And later on, his wife kept getting the feedback. She said, "Wow, whatever you were into the other night, people keep coming up and telling me what a charismatic guy you were." And it was not feedback she was used to hearing about her. And so it was really fascinating that telling, in a sense, that's listening to stories and then retelling the story
Yeah.
to that person. Yeah, that definitely has an intrigue factor to it. What was the actual purpose of the dinner? Why had you gone there? Was it to hear about this guy, Gerald?
No, not at all. So we've become very close friends with a guy who's a restaurateur in town in San Diego, and he's got 4 restaurants here, and he also has created a project that we invested in right across the border in Mexico. It's like a 300-acre retreat center, learning place, community. Um, and it's in the Ensenada Via de Guadalupe area, which is the Guadalupe Valley. That's the wine making territory of Mexico, about 2 hours south of San Diego. And first of all, his restaurants are amazing. They're really, really good. And I just forgot, what's the alcohol that's green that you drip over a little ice sugar cube?
Absinthe.
Absinthe. So the one we were at last night is called Wormwood. It's an absinthe bar. And then, it's like it's a Michelin quality restaurant. And we're just sitting this great little outdoor thing. And there was a pianist and a singer playing jazz and flute. And, it was like a very French night. And then the purpose of the dinner is typically he does these Jeffersonian dinners where you've got a theme and a topic and idea, and you bring people from all walks of life with very differing points of view. And apparently what Jefferson was known for is he'd put together these dinners, and they were really designed to create conversations with people who have very different points of view than you. So it was just civil discourse. And so that was the intent. And we were there with, I won't mention their names just in case, but some people you'd recognize at this table. But what was great is we have and had conversations we wouldn't normally have. And you certainly, the truth is I'm talking about it now, so it left an impression on me. And that goes back to what makes for an intriguing day, dinner, or group is if it's an idea worth sharing.
Yeah,
So
that's really great. Well, that actually, Katie and I do that here. We call them salons. We have a salon where we bring a bunch of our friends and maybe some people we don't know in and talk about some particular theme. We haven't actually done it since the pandemic, now that I think about it. So we're going to have to get that going again. I really loved them. They were a lot of fun.
Yes. And what we decided we were going to do is create one of our next upcoming ones is we're going to start doing these regularly. And we're going to, one of our topics will be, we'll do AI dinners. And so everyone will come prepared with either a question you have about AI, if you're not knowledgeable about it, that you'd love to know if it's possible or true. And then if you are knowledgeable, you've got to have something, a great idea worth sharing that isn't normally known. And you'll have like 4 minutes to present or ask and get feedback. So it's round robin. It's intended to never be boring, and no one can dominate. All right. I've got a couple more for you.
Yep.
So a good friend of mine has a really great, intriguing question that I love. So Lee Stein is his name, and he asks a question when he meets you. You know him. And he says, "Why don't I already know you?"
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny that you should mention Lee, because just the other day I was sitting out by our swimming pool and I was thinking back to a conversation I had with him in exactly the same place out by the swimming pool, probably 10 or 15 years ago, and I haven't kept up with him. So you just answered a question of mine about if he's still around or not.
Yeah. Well, we're having lunch tomorrow of all the crazy things. And
please give him my regards.
I will. And what prompted the lunch, other than the fact that he's one of my favorite walking buddies, he's always got so many interesting things going on, but probably about 9 months ago or so, I don't know if I had shared this with you, I had just taught AI at the Peter Diamandis event, and he said, how would you like to go to Norman Lear's house and teach him AI, teach him about AI? And he's 101. And this is, right, not too long before he passed. And of course I said yes. And so in this new book I have, I've got a photo of me sitting down. I've got a picture of Archie Bunker on his television. And I built an AI Archie Bunker that was talking to Norman. And we were brainstorming, basically creating new versions of his shows. including All in the Family, but updated. So it was this, you know, basically it's today I'm producing a new show, and we came up with new themes and created storyboards and photos. And he was just, you know, his mind was swimming, but he was fully engaged. And it was, and I had a photo that I'm hopefully going to be able to include that photo in the upcoming book. So anyway, that's sort of what started it, and we're like, well, let's grab lunch. And but anyway, I'll pass that along. So that was that one, and then I've got a stage tool that I use for creating maximum intrigue. There's two of them, but this one is when you talked about what you do, one of mine is I call it relationship bingo, and the objective is to teach less, but what you do is drop as many little personal nuggets about you as possible to create as many relationship opportunities with as many members as possible. So, for example, if I have a point I'm going to teach, I'll also mention something about being super ADHD, being the son of a barber, growing up in a little bitty town in Minnesota. And you know, invariably there will be a strong chunk will be like, I'm a Midwesterner too, or I'm from Minnesota, or my dad was a barber. And you'd be amazed at how many people I had in my life who became long-term customers. And it wasn't about what I taught them or about the value. It was the relation or the relatability. So I typically I counted once, and I probably had about 60 bingo squares that were, you know, pretty significant relatable concepts that I inserted into the stories. And I noticed as soon as I started doing that I had a lot more followers and a lot more customers, but also, you know, that's what people would remember about you. It'd be the first thing that comes to mind is something that's just like them. So,
Well, you know, that's interesting because especially with Minnesota, I've found that no matter where I am in the world, I can be on the other end of the world. There's going to be somebody from Minnesota in the audience. And the other thing I can guarantee that no matter where I am in the world, there's going to be a Chicago Cubs fan.
oh yeah.
All I have to do is say something about Chicago Cubs, and I will always have two or three people. I'm in Calcutta, you know, giving a talk to 500 people. There'll be 50 people that'll stand up and cheer for the Chicago Cubs.
That's interesting. I think it's funny. That is a cult uh um team for sure. Okay, I had one more stage intrigue tool. We call them magic tricks. So the idea is whenever I show up at some kind of an event, I always open up with a magic trick. Now, I don't do or perform any magic. I never learned the finger dexterity really, but basically I didn't practice enough. That's the reality. But I'll demonstrate like a really cool technology thing that creates that oh wow moment that hopefully they've never seen before. And it's always relevant to the host of the event. And then I'll pick someone in the audience that I'll learn about ahead of time. So that person feels like a celebrity. So there's the shared celebrity status, but also you'll have someone looking for an opportunity so you can do it about them or for them too. And that creates a lot of stick. You just a lot less bleed out of the room. Like you said, escaping with the phone. So when I do an AI speech, for example, I'll always create a deep fake version of the host, maybe announcing me. And then lately I've been doing this one where I created a deep fake voice of Scarlett Johansson. And she's basically introducing me at some point in the program, giving the audience a direct command, which is take lots of notes and take out your phone because Mike's going to give you something. And then I'll have her say, oh, and make sure you give me a ring when you're at the Emmys next year so we can grab drinks, and make sure you bring, and I insert someone's name in there so they feel like they're part of a celebrity experience. And but it just creates this, again, a conversational element. And of course, whoever you featured remembers that forever. It's like, that's the guy who shows up.
I really like that. I was amazed to see Scarlett Johansson the other night on Saturday Night Live. Did you happen
Oh,
to
I
catch
heard.
that?
I didn't watch it yet, but she did the mockery of that idiotic
It,
Republican lady.
yeah, and you should see it too. I mean, look it up because it's one of the
I,
funniest things I've seen in a long time. It's got a couple of punchlines in it that actually had me. I had to stop the recording,
oh,
to actually finish laughing at
get a
it.
breath. Yeah. I read it this morning and I saw it and I figured I'd probably play it in the next 48 hours. So thanks for the reminder. It sounds awesome. It looked funny.
And also, I wanted to put in another word for storytelling because one of the first things I try to do when I talk to a group is tell some kind of personal story
Yes.
that sets a tone or shares something that relates to the subject or some kind of a personal note that maybe doesn't take 10 minutes to tell, but maybe just takes a couple of minutes to tell. But I think it's good to have people hear you talk about yourself from the first person to find
Mm,
out, to get a little metaphysical, I think people listen to the vibrational quality of what's coming out of your mouth and compare that to the vibrational quality of what they see in your body. And if you're sitting there
hmm
squirming like a toad, but trying to tell them that you're relaxed or trying to talk to them about relaxation, and they see you chewing your nails during the break, well, it puts out a canceling out vibe that no matter
Yeah.
what your mouth is saying, that your body vibrations cancel that out. So that's, I think, the thing too, that people respond to authenticity when they hear or see a person who really looks and feels like they're on the same wavelength as their life purpose. Are you
Yeah.
there doing your life purpose? And that's kind of how I make a lot of my decisions about what I do is, does it fit with my life purpose? Does it um, allow me to expand in love, creativity, and abundance as I help other people do the same.
Yeah.
Once you get your life purpose figured out, it really is a good steering
hmm
mechanism
Mm.
about what you're going to be doing moment to moment in your life.
Yeah. That is boy, there's a lot to unpack there, but one of them is, wavelength and how I make decisions, but also having your life's purpose figured out. Um,
Mhm.
I think that is one of the most intriguing qualities of anyone. I mean, that is what a true leader feels like to an audience.
I
Um,
remember somebody saying one time that great leaders, great teachers, gurus, etc., don't need to have all the answers. They just need to pass out the really interesting, juicy questions.
yeah,
And I think there's a lot to that because one of the things I like to do when I'm working with people is bring up a couple of the big questions, the questions I'm wondering about, like, hmm, what's the most important thing that we as a group need to accomplish and experience together? That's a great question in any group because it enables people to
yeah,
think of themselves as part of a whole and that the way they are makes a contribution to what's going on in the room. I've done that on television too. So it doesn't have to be just a physical room. It's an invitation to whoever's participating to get on a certain wavelength by embracing a certain question. And
Yeah.
the poet E. E. Cummings once said, it's always the beautiful questions that get the beautiful answers. And so
Mm.
to focus on, what's the juiciest question I need to answer today when I go up on that stage? And what would be the juiciest question my people in the audience want to answer today? So
Yeah.
hatching those kind of big questions, I think, has an intriguing factor to it.
I I have a plus for that one, which is, and this has been an extremely effective question. So if whether I'm on stage or meeting with a client, or maybe I got an introduction to someone, so we're meeting for whatever reason, I will ask, if you I want you to imagine where you're walking away from this 20-minute or 30-minute or 45-minute conversation we're about to have right now. What would make you feel like it was an 11 experience on a
Mm.
scale of 1 to 10? And it really makes them think. And then, if my objective is to give them that 11 experience, and then also, what would that mean to you? Like, what would the benefit to your life be? It requires some thought, and it makes for fantastically intentional meetings and conversations. But on a group basis, I'll often survey an audience before I speak or present. And if I have 30 or 111 statements, what I do now is actually export that data. I feed it into an AI, and I say, give me a list of the top 5 categories that were
Mm.
mentioned the most frequently by percentage and in order. And that way, I get my top 5 speaking points that I know are going to deliver 11 experiences. Um, yeah,
Wow, is your new book, does it tell people how to do that?
yeah, it
That's
does.
genius. I mean, that's such an ingenious idea.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
it's like crowdsourcing in the moment.
Yes.
That I mean, that's a fabulous idea. What a great use of AI too. So many people are scared to death of AI because they immediately go into thinking it's going to capture their job for them. But uh,
Yeah.
I appreciate that you're pointing out some of the incredible benefits of it.
Yeah. Well, what's great is I actually do that live. So I'll show people how to take normal data, and then I'll grab the data, I'll feed it into that, and then I'll show them the results. I'll give them the prompt. And part of the engagement vehicle is, oh, by the way, I'm going to give you the document with all the prompts. You'll get everything I'm making for you right now. And my other magic trick is I'll pick someone out of the audience and say, let's create a business together. Let's solve your biggest problem you have. Or if I don't have hand raisers, I'll pick someone out of I can actually ask the AI to pick someone out of the 30 or 50 surveys and tell me what their biggest question was, right? Or I'll do, engagement exercise where I'll have people raise their hands, okay, here are the 5 top things. Raise your hand if you'd like to do this, this, or this. So keeps the intrigue factor high as well, and the engagement factor high. But I
Yeah.
couldn't do that without AI. I couldn't do it in real time.
Well, if you had some 2 or 3 PhD students in the background cranking
Yeah,
away on
yeah. You'd have to have a
calculators and
room
things.
full of nerds. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true.
Well,
Um,
I went to graduate school 50 years ago at a time when computers were just coming in. So you actually did have to have a room full of nerds there
mhm.
working calculators, staying up all night. Um, but the modern way is much better.
It's so nice, as I say, you've finally got a tool that can keep up with your imagination and allow you to create in real time. It's such an exciting it's an exciting moment, and the fact that you can react in real time is what makes it so much fun.
That's really incredible. I love that.
Mm,
Sometime we ought to do a whole podcast on the technicalities of that. I'm not enough of a nerd, I don't think, to keep up with you, but I bet I could ask some questions that
Yeah.
translate your mega nerd into regular old plain English.
Yeah. Well, we'll do well, this is a good way to wrap up this episode, which is if one of our creations will be um that will solve the three biggest opportunities or solve a creative challenge in real time. It'll be like stump me with an idea and we'll build something in real time together. We'll actually make it. And it can be
Hmm.
stories, it can be images, it can be videos, music. Um, it could be a technical problem. And that's, yeah. So we'll do three magic tricks using AI about AI and make it about and for our audience. What do you think of that?
I think it's a great idea, and I just thought of something else too.
Okay.
Um, I was speaking at a recent event, and I was the keynote speaker, but one of the other speakers had done a process with everybody, which was had to do with well, it was in a sense of finding out what their 11 might be, what would have to happen for
Mm-hmm.
them to have a takeaway from that. And one of the things that came out of it was people wanted to hear a compelling personal story of the person's own transformation. So
Yes.
that was one thing that they love to hear. And so I I have about 4 or 5 stories of
Yep.
my own personal transformation, including my number one signature story that I don't know how many hundreds of times I've told. But we could get AI to make a little movie or a storyboard out of
Hmm.
that. That would be very exciting.
Yeah.
I'd love to do that sometime.
Yeah. We can we'll do that. So I was telling you about the Norman Lear experience. That's basically how I led the thing as I came in and I created um first of all, I opened by demonstrating the deep fake Archie Bunker using Archie Bunker's voice. And I had him talking to Norman and then inviting him to make a new show called All in the Family 2023. And then I showed him how to create storyboards and animatics and then even music. So that's entirely possible. And uh, and there was a new tool that ChatGPT showed off that is basically a text to video prompt, which you can insert pretty complicated things. So it'll be like, and it'll be like a American spaceman on Mars, and you can even describe the lens that you want on the camera
Mm,
and how you want the camera to move, and it makes artificial people. It renders it very
mm,
very quickly. So
mm.
um, of course, Hollywood's terrified of this right now. On one hand, there's a lot of people who are scared for their jobs. And on the other hand, what you'll see are these hyper personalized new movies and a whole new breed of filmmakers, just like you saw it of when you could start having a home studio,
Yeah. Well, I'm
no
excited
longer.
about that possibility because, I was in the movie business for 15 years or so there. And one of the things that made my business thrive is we went out and found movies that nobody else was ever going to be able to see. We found them at film festivals and things like that. And that was the whole business was built on bringing these kind of spiritual cinema movies to
Yeah.
people's homes. Now there's a whole new technology, there's streaming and that kind of thing. So it opens up the marketplace enormously for movies from the heart. And,
Yeah.
like some of the movies that got nominated for Oscars this year had that quality to them,
Yeah.
that they were deeply personal kind of things that didn't require a lot of
Hmm.
special effects or anything like that.
Yeah.
But also, special effects is going to be a big deal too, because if you can just dial up on your AI program, let me
Yes.
have a semi tumbling off a cliff, exploding at the bottom, and make it an old-fashioned semi, and if you can get that 10 seconds later.
Yeah. It's possible now with finagling. You kind of have to be a visual hacker, but you can definitely do it. And then if you, again, some of the tools that have just come out like in the past 2 weeks are really, really close. I think we're probably, there's some discussion right now that they're waiting on releasing this new breakthrough technology till after the election. Okay. Because the fear of deepfakes. It's that good.
I can see that. Yeah, I can
Uh-huh.
see that big. Well, let's wrap this session
Yeah.
up. Um, I think we're onto something here, and we may want to think about doing an intriguing part two, because I can think of other elements of this now that I start getting it up online in my mind that are worth talking about creating intrigue in a public speaking situation or on television, that kind of thing. Television works
Yeah.
a little bit differently because it's a cooler medium. It's not as red hot a medium as radio and in-person stuff is.
Yeah.
But we're going to always want to be interested in being more intriguing to our clients and having our clients be more intriguing to the world around them. So here's to intrigue, my man.
I love it. This has been, I'm glad we went down this path, and there were those little nuancy gay Hendricksisms that I had never thought about before. You have a really fascinating way of slicing reality and making it better to live in. I don't know how else to. Yeah. So thank you. This has been a great episode. I appreciate it.